The Comeback Mindset: How to Rebuild, Recover, and Come Back Stronger. Written and published by Rising Audiobook. Introduction. There are moments in life when everything you built seems to collapse at once. A dream breaks, a relationship ends, a plan falls apart, confidence disappears, and in that quiet, painful space, it can feel as if failure has written the final chapter of your story. But failure is not the end of your story. It is often the place where your real story begins. The comeback mindset is not about pretending pain does not exist. It is about learning how to stand in the middle of disappointment without surrendering your future. It is about finding strength when you feel weak, clarity when everything feels chaotic, and courage when fear is speaking the loudest. It is about rebuilding from the ground up, not as the person you were before, but as someone wiser, stronger, and harder to break. Every setback carries a hidden lesson, every loss carries a hidden direction, and every fall gives you a choice: stay down or rise with more purpose than before. This audiobook will take you through that journey. Step by step, you will learn how to heal, how to rebuild, how to recover, and how to come back stronger than ever, because your setback is not your ending. It is the beginning of your greatest comeback. Chapter 1. When Life Falls Apart. Life rarely warns us before it changes. One moment, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. You have plans, confidence, and a clear vision of where you're headed. Then, without notice, something unexpected happens. You lose a job you worked hard for. A relationship ends. A business fails. An opportunity slips away. A dream you've spent years chasing suddenly feels out of reach. In moments like these, it doesn't just feel as though life has fallen apart. It feels as though you have fallen apart. Failure has a unique way of attacking our identity. Instead of saying, "I failed," we quietly begin believing, "I am a failure." That single shift in thinking is one of the most dangerous traps anyone can fall into. It transforms a temporary event into a permanent label. But here's the truth that many people never discover. Failure is an experience, not an identity. Every person you admire has faced moments when life refused to follow their plans. Entrepreneurs have watched businesses collapse before building thriving companies. Athletes have lost championship games before becoming legends. Writers have collected rejection letters before publishing best-selling books. Their success did not come because they avoided failure. It came because they refused to let failure define who they were. When life falls apart, your emotions become louder than your logic. Fear tells you that you'll never recover. Doubt whispers that you're not good enough. Shame convinces you that everyone else is moving forward while you're standing still. These thoughts feel real because they are fueled by pain, but feelings are not always facts. Pain narrows your perspective. It makes today's disappointment look like tomorrow's destiny. Think about standing in the middle of a storm. Dark clouds surround you. Rain blocks your vision. Strong winds make every step difficult. While you're inside the storm, it's almost impossible to believe that blue skies still exist. Yet the sky has never disappeared. It is simply hidden behind temporary clouds. Life works the same way. The darkest seasons often convince us that nothing good remains ahead. In reality, they are temporary chapters, not permanent endings. One of the greatest mistakes people make after failure is rushing to escape the discomfort. We distract ourselves with endless entertainment, unhealthy habits, or constant busyness because sitting with disappointment feels unbearable. But healing never begins through avoidance. Growth begins when we are willing to face our emotions honestly. Accepting a setback does not mean approving of it. It means acknowledging reality instead of fighting it. Imagine trying to rebuild a house after a powerful earthquake. You cannot begin construction until you honestly assess the damage. Ignoring broken walls won't repair them. Pretending everything is fine won't create a stronger foundation. The same principle applies to your life. Before rebuilding, you must first accept where you stand. Acceptance creates clarity. Clarity creates direction. Direction creates progress. Another reason failure feels so personal is that we often attach our worth to our achievements. Society celebrates success loudly, but rarely talks about the countless setbacks that came before it. Social media amplifies this illusion by showing polished victories while hiding painful struggles. As a result, when our own lives become messy, we mistakenly believe we're the only ones falling behind. You're not. Behind nearly every remarkable success story is a chapter filled with uncertainty, rejection, disappointment, and self-doubt. The difference is that successful people chose to keep writing their stories instead of closing the book too soon. Sometimes life has to remove what is comfortable before it can introduce what is meaningful. A closed door often redirects us toward an opportunity we never would have discovered otherwise. While it's difficult to appreciate this truth during painful moments, many people eventually look back and realize that their greatest setback became the turning point that shaped their best future. This doesn't mean every painful experience is good. It means every painful experience can become useful. There is a hidden beginning inside every ending. The end of one career may become the start of a calling. The end of one relationship may teach lessons that lead to a healthier future. The end of one dream may reveal a purpose that was even greater than the one you originally imagined. Your responsibility is not to control everything that happens to you. Your responsibility is to decide how you will respond. That decision marks the beginning of every comeback. Today, you may feel uncertain. You may feel broken, disappointed, or exhausted from carrying the weight of unmet expectations. Those feelings are valid. They deserve compassion, not criticism. But they do not have to become the foundation of your future. Instead, let this moment become your starting point. Accept where you are without surrendering where you can go. Refuse to let one chapter define the entire book of your life. Remember that strength is not revealed when life is easy. It is revealed when life demands that you rise after you've been knocked down. Every comeback begins with a moment like this, a quiet decision to keep moving forward even when the path is unclear. Life may have fallen apart, but your future has not. Your story is still being written, and the next chapter has the power to become the most inspiring one yet. Chapter 2. Healing the Invisible Wounds. Not every wound leaves a scar that others can see. Some of the deepest injuries happen beneath the surface, hidden behind forced smiles, polite conversations, and the quiet words, "I'm fine." The world often recognizes physical pain because it is visible. Emotional pain, however, is different. It can live inside a person for years without anyone noticing. A rejection, a betrayal, a painful mistake, or the loss of a dream may not leave a mark on the body, but it can leave lasting marks on the heart and mind. The difficult truth is that many people try to move forward before they have allowed themselves to heal. They believe that staying busy will erase the pain. They bury themselves in work, distract themselves with endless entertainment, or pretend the hurt never happened. From the outside, they appear to have recovered. Inside, however, the wound remains open. Healing does not happen because time passes. Healing happens because we face what time alone cannot fix. One of the greatest acts of courage is allowing yourself to admit that you are hurting. Society often teaches us that strength means hiding emotions, suppressing tears, and acting as though nothing can affect us. But real strength is found in honesty. It takes courage to say, "That experience changed me, it hurt me, and I need time to recover." Ignoring emotional pain is like ignoring a serious injury. You may continue walking for a while, but eventually the untreated wound becomes impossible to overlook. The longer it remains neglected, the more difficult recovery becomes. Many invisible wounds are created by disappointment. You expected life to unfold one way, but reality chose another path. You worked tirelessly toward a goal that never materialized. You trusted someone who broke that trust. You believed that success was just around the corner, only to find another obstacle standing in your way. Disappointment hurts because it shatters expectation. The greater the hope, the deeper the disappointment can feel. Yet disappointment does not have to destroy hope. Sometimes it simply redirects it. Consider the story of J.K. Rowling. Before the world knew her as the author of the Harry Potter series, she experienced years filled with rejection, financial hardship, and uncertainty. Publisher after publisher turned down her manuscript. Every rejection could have convinced her that her dream had reached its end. She could have accepted those decisions as proof that she lacked talent. Instead, she chose a different interpretation. She allowed herself to feel the disappointment, but she refused to let rejection define her future. Eventually, one publisher decided to take a chance, and the story that had been rejected so many times became one of the most successful literary series in history. Her journey reminds us of an important truth. Rejection is painful, but it is not always a final verdict. Sometimes it is simply a delay before the right opportunity arrives. Another invisible wound many people carry is shame. Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says, "I made a mistake." Shame says, "I am the mistake." That single difference changes everything. When shame takes control, people stop seeing possibilities. They begin believing they are permanently broken, unworthy of love, incapable of success, or undeserving of happiness. Instead of learning from their failures, they become imprisoned by them. But your worst decision is not your identity. Your biggest mistake is not your permanent description. Every human being has chapters they wish they could rewrite. Every successful person has moments they would rather forget. Growth does not come from pretending those chapters never existed. It comes from learning what they have to teach and then turning the page. Regret can also become an invisible prison. Many people spend years replaying old conversations, missed opportunities, and painful decisions. They ask themselves endless questions. If only I had tried harder. If only I had spoken sooner. If only I had chosen differently. The problem is that the past never changes because we replay it another 1,000 times. Reflection is healthy. Rumination is not. Reflection asks, what can I learn? Rumination asks, why can't I change what already happened? One question creates wisdom. The other creates suffering. Healing begins when you stop fighting yesterday and start caring for today's heart. This requires something many people rarely offer themselves: compassion. Imagine a close friend comes to you after experiencing a devastating failure. Would you tell them they are worthless? Would you remind them every day of their mistakes? Would you insist that one failure has ruined their entire future? Of course not. You would encourage them. You would remind them that setbacks happen. You would tell them that they deserve another chance. Then why is it so difficult to offer yourself the same kindness? Often, we become our own harshest critics. We demand perfection from ourselves while offering grace to everyone else. We expect ourselves to recover instantly, forgetting that emotional healing follows no timetable. There is no prize for pretending to be okay before you truly are. Healing is rarely dramatic. It usually happens quietly. It happens every time you choose honesty over denial, every time you forgive yourself for being human, every time you replace self-condemnation with understanding, every time you decide that your future deserves more attention than your past. Slowly, the invisible wounds begin to close, not because they disappear completely, but because they stop controlling your life. You may still remember the heartbreak. You may still remember the rejection. You may still remember the disappointment. But eventually those memories become reminders of your resilience instead of reminders of your weakness. The goal is not to erase pain. The goal is to transform it. Pain that is ignored becomes bitterness. Pain that is understood becomes wisdom. Pain that is healed becomes strength. As you continue this journey, remember that recovery is not measured by how quickly you stop hurting. It is measured by how gently you learn to carry your experiences without allowing them to carry you. The wounds you cannot see are often the ones that shape your future the most. Treat them with patience. Treat them with honesty. Above all, treat yourself with the compassion you would so willingly give to someone you love. Because healing is not a sign that you are weak. Healing is proof that despite everything you've been through, you have chosen to live, to grow, and to believe that your best days are still ahead. Chapter 3. Choosing hope over despair. There comes a moment after every painful setback when life grows strangely quiet. The phone stops ringing. The applause fades. The excitement disappears. All that remains are your thoughts, your doubts, and one unavoidable question. What happens now? This is the moment that defines far more than the setback itself. It is the moment that determines whether disappointment becomes the end of your story or the beginning of a remarkable comeback. Many people believe that hope is something you either have or you don't. They imagine hope as an emotion that appears when life is going well and disappears when everything falls apart. But hope doesn't work that way. Real hope is not born from comfort. It is born from courage. It is not the result of favorable circumstances. It is the decision to believe that your future can still become better, even when your present offers very little evidence. That is why hope is so powerful. It asks you to believe before you can see results. It asks you to keep walking before the road becomes clear. It asks you to trust that today's struggle is not the final destination. After failure, the human mind naturally searches for certainty. Unfortunately, when pain is fresh, it often finds certainty in the wrong places. It begins collecting evidence that things will never improve. One rejection suddenly means you'll always be rejected. One failure convinces you that success belongs to everyone except you. One difficult season becomes proof that your best days are behind you. This is how despair quietly enters a person's life. Despair rarely arrives with dramatic announcements. Instead, it grows through small thoughts, repeated day after day. Why should I try again? Nothing ever works out for me. Maybe I'm just not good enough. At first, these thoughts seem temporary, but repeated often enough, they become beliefs. And beliefs shape decisions far more than circumstances ever will. When people stop believing in possibilities, they stop taking action. They stop applying for opportunities because they expect rejection. They stop building relationships because they expect disappointment. They stop chasing dreams because they fear another failure. Eventually, life appears to confirm their negative expectations, not because success was impossible, but because they stopped giving themselves the chance to find it. This is why choosing hope is one of the bravest decisions you will ever make. Hope does not deny reality. It simply refuses to let reality have the final word. One of the greatest obstacles to hope is adopting a victim mindset. This phrase is often misunderstood. It does not mean pretending that painful experiences never happened. Many people have suffered genuine heartbreak, betrayal, injustice, financial hardship, illness, or loss. Their pain deserves compassion and acknowledgement. A victim mindset begins when painful experiences become permanent excuses for giving up responsibility for the future. Instead of asking, "What can I do from here?" the question becomes, "Why does this always happen to me?" Instead of searching for solutions, the mind searches for confirmation that life is unfair. Little by little, personal power is handed over to circumstances. The truth is, you cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always influence what happens next. That is where hope begins. Consider the remarkable story of Nick Vujicic. Born without arms and legs, Nick faced challenges that most people cannot imagine. As a young boy, he struggled with loneliness, bullying, and overwhelming feelings of hopelessness. There were moments when he questioned whether life was worth living. Looking at his circumstances, many people would have assumed that happiness and success were impossible. But one courageous decision changed everything. Nick stopped asking why life had been unfair to him and started asking how his life could make a difference for someone else. That shift transformed his entire future. Instead of becoming trapped by his limitations, he became known around the world for inspiring millions of people with his message of faith, resilience, and purpose. His circumstances did not suddenly become easier. His perspective became stronger. His story reminds us that hope is not created by perfect conditions. Hope is created by choosing to believe that your life still has value, purpose, and possibilities. The same principle applies to every comeback. No one wakes up one morning completely transformed. Every great comeback begins with one courageous decision. It may be deciding to apply for another job after countless rejections. It may be choosing to trust again after heartbreak. It may be returning to your studies after failure or rebuilding a business after financial loss. These decisions may seem small at first, but they carry extraordinary power because they break the cycle of despair. Think about sunrise. During the darkest hours of the night, it is easy to believe the darkness will last forever. Yet the sun continues rising every single day, whether we can see it or not. The darkness never defeats the morning, it only delays it. Life follows the same pattern. Pain has its season, failure has its season, grief has its season. But no season lasts forever. The challenge is remaining patient enough to keep walking until the light appears. Hope also changes the questions you ask yourself. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen?" you begin asking, "What can this teach me?" Instead of saying, "My life is over," you begin saying, "This chapter is difficult, but it is not the entire story." Those simple shifts in thinking may seem insignificant, yet they completely change the direction of your life. Remember that confidence does not come before action. It often follows action. The same is true for hope. You do not always feel hopeful before taking the next step. Sometimes you choose the next step first, and hope quietly grows with every step you take. Progress creates confidence. Confidence strengthens hope. Hope inspires greater action. That cycle becomes the foundation of every lasting comeback. Today, perhaps your courageous decision is not something dramatic. Perhaps it is simply deciding not to quit. Perhaps it is making one phone call, sending one application, forgiving yourself for one mistake, or believing, just for today, that your future deserves another chance. Never underestimate the power of one courageous decision. Every remarkable achievement in history began with someone choosing to continue when quitting would have been easier. Your past may explain your scars, but it does not have to determine your future. Your failures may shape your wisdom, but they do not define your identity. The moment you choose hope over despair, you begin reclaiming the future that fear tried to steal. Your comeback does not start when life becomes easier. It starts the moment you decide that your story is not finished. And sometimes that single decision is enough to change everything. Chapter 4. Rebuilding your confidence. Confidence is one of the first things failure takes away. It doesn't happen all at once. It disappears quietly, one disappointment at a time. A failed interview makes you question your abilities. A rejected proposal makes you doubt your talent. A broken relationship makes you wonder if you're enough. Before long, the voice that once encouraged you is replaced by a voice that constantly criticizes you. You begin to second-guess every decision. You hesitate before taking opportunities that once excited you. You compare yourself to people who seem to have everything figured out. Eventually, the biggest obstacle standing between you and your future is no longer the setback itself. It is the belief that you no longer have what it takes. But here's an important truth that many people never realize. Confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build. Many people wait until they feel confident before taking action. They tell themselves, once I believe in myself, I'll apply for that job. Once I feel ready, I'll start my business. Once my confidence returns, I'll pursue my dream. Unfortunately, confidence rarely works that way. Action comes first. Confidence follows. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. No one starts with complete confidence. You wobble, you lose balance, you fall, you get back up. Every attempt teaches your mind and body something new. After enough practice, riding becomes natural. Confidence didn't appear before the first ride. It was created because of the first ride. Life follows the same pattern. The people who appear fearless are rarely fearless at all. They simply have enough experience acting despite uncertainty. Every small success teaches the brain one powerful lesson. I survived. I can do this again. That lesson becomes confidence. One reason failure destroys confidence so quickly is because we often confuse results with identity. We believe that if something didn't work, then something must be wrong with us. But failing at a task does not mean you lack value. Making a mistake does not mean you are incapable. Being rejected does not mean you are unworthy. Results measure an outcome. They do not measure your potential. Unfortunately, our inner critic rarely understands this distinction. That voice inside your head remembers every mistake you've made. It reminds you of every embarrassing moment, every missed opportunity, and every painful failure. It tells you that trying again is dangerous because you might fail again. The inner critic often sounds convincing because it speaks with the language of fear. But fear is not always trying to protect you. Sometimes it is simply trying to keep you comfortable. Growth has never been comfortable. Every meaningful achievement requires stepping into situations where success is uncertain. If you wait until every doubt disappears, you'll spend your life waiting. One of the most effective ways to silence self-doubt is not by arguing with it, but by proving it wrong through action. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens trust. Every promise you break weakens it. Think about how trust works in relationships. If someone constantly says they will do something but never follows through, eventually you stop believing them. The same principle applies to the relationship you have with yourself. If you promise to wake up early but repeatedly ignore the alarm, your mind notices. If you promise to exercise but continually make excuses, your mind notices. If you promise to finish a project but constantly postpone it, your mind notices. Without realizing it, you begin teaching yourself that your own words cannot be trusted. Confidence is deeply connected to self-trust. The good news is that self-trust can always be rebuilt. It begins with keeping small promises. Wake up when you said you would. Read 10 pages instead of saying you'll read someday. Exercise for 15 minutes instead of waiting for the perfect schedule. Finish one task before starting another. These actions may appear insignificant, but they create something incredibly valuable: evidence. Your mind begins collecting proof that you are someone who follows through. And confidence is built on evidence, not empty motivation. This is exactly how Michael Jordan rebuilt his confidence after being cut from his high school varsity basketball team. That rejection could have convinced him that he wasn't talented enough. Instead, he treated it as feedback rather than a final verdict. He returned to the court with greater determination, practicing relentlessly while many of his peers rested. Day after day, shot after shot, he improved his skills. Long before the world called him one of the greatest basketball players in history, he became someone who trusted his work ethic. His confidence did not come from praise. It came from preparation. Preparation has a remarkable effect on the human mind. When you know you've done the work, fear loses much of its power. You still feel nervous, but your preparation reminds you that you are capable. This is why consistent action is so much more powerful than temporary motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Confidence built through consistency remains. There will be days when you don't feel inspired, days when progress seems invisible, days when your old doubts return and whisper that nothing is changing. Keep going anyway. Real confidence is not the absence of doubt. It is the decision to move forward despite doubt. As you continue taking small actions, something remarkable begins to happen. The failures that once seemed overwhelming lose their emotional grip. You stop seeing yourself as someone who failed and begin seeing yourself as someone who learns. Challenges no longer become evidence that you are incapable. They become opportunities to grow stronger. Eventually, people around you will notice the change. They may think your confidence appeared overnight. They will see the results, but not the countless quiet moments that created them. The mornings you chose discipline over comfort. The evenings you kept working when no one was watching. And the small promises you honored even when they felt insignificant. Those moments are where confidence is born. Never wait for someone else to believe in you before believing in yourself. The opinions of others can encourage you, but they cannot sustain you. Lasting confidence comes from knowing that regardless of success or failure, you will continue showing up, learning, improving, and moving forward. Remember, confidence is not reserved for extraordinary people. It is earned by ordinary people who repeatedly choose courage over comfort. Every step you take today, no matter how small, is helping rebuild the person you thought you had lost. Every promise you keep strengthens the foundation beneath your feet. Every challenge you face makes you a little more capable than you were yesterday. One day, you'll look back and realize that your greatest source of confidence was never the victories themselves. It was the person you became while fighting for them, and that person is far stronger than failure ever imagined. Chapter 5. The Strength Hidden in Failure. Failure is one of life's greatest teachers, yet it is the one teacher most people try to avoid. We celebrate success because it feels rewarding. We admire achievement because it represents progress. But very few people stop to appreciate the quiet lessons hidden inside defeat. Ironically, the experiences we desperately wish had never happened often become the very experiences that shape our character, sharpen our judgment, and prepare us for greater success. Success feels good. Failure makes you grow. Think back to a time when everything in your life was going exactly as planned. Chances are you weren't questioning your habits, your decisions, or your perspective. When things are working well, we naturally assume our current approach is good enough. Success gives us confidence, but it can also make us comfortable. Failure interrupts that comfort. It forces us to pause, reflect, and ask difficult questions. What went wrong? What could I have done differently? What do I need to learn? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are also transformative. They shift our attention away from blame and toward growth. Every meaningful improvement begins with honest reflection. Imagine a sculptor working with a rough block of stone. At first glance, it appears imperfect and ordinary. Yet with every careful strike of the chisel, unnecessary pieces are removed until a beautiful sculpture begins to emerge. The stone does not become valuable because it avoided pressure. It becomes valuable because it endured it. Life shapes us in much the same way. Every disappointment removes a little arrogance. Every mistake adds a little wisdom. Every challenge strengthens a part of us that comfort never could. This is why people who have overcome adversity often possess a quiet confidence that cannot be taught in classrooms or found in books. Their strength comes from experience. They have learned that setbacks are survivable, that uncertainty is temporary, and that resilience grows stronger each time it is tested. Unfortunately, many people misunderstand the purpose of failure. They see it as evidence that they are incapable instead of seeing it as information they can use. Failure is not your enemy. It is feedback. Imagine trying to learn a new language. If you pronounce words incorrectly, your mistakes help you understand what needs improvement. Without those mistakes, learning would be impossible. The same principle applies to every area of life. Every unsuccessful attempt contains valuable information that success often hides. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is refusing to learn from them. Some people repeat the same patterns year after year because they never pause long enough to ask why they keep getting the same results. They blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck while ignoring the habits and decisions that need to change. Growth begins the moment responsibility replaces excuses. This does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. Life is unpredictable, and not every setback is your fault. Sometimes circumstances are beyond your control. Sometimes people disappoint you. Sometimes opportunities disappear without warning, but even when you cannot control the event, you can control your response. That response determines whether failure becomes a prison or a classroom. Thomas Edison is often remembered for inventing the electric light bulb, but many people forget how many unsuccessful experiments came before his breakthrough. He reportedly tested thousands of different materials before finding one that worked effectively. When asked about his repeated failures, he explained that he had not failed. He had simply discovered thousands of ways that did not work. That perspective changed everything. Instead of viewing each unsuccessful attempt as proof that success was impossible, he treated every setback as progress. Each experiment eliminated another wrong path and brought him closer to the right one. Imagine if he had quit after the first 100 attempts, or the first 500. The world might have lost one of history's greatest inventions. Your life is no different. The answers you seek are often waiting on the other side of persistence. Failure also teaches humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is recognizing that there is always something more to learn. People who remain teachable continue improving long after others believe they know enough. They listen to feedback. They remain curious. They adapt when circumstances change. The opposite of humility is pride. Pride resists correction because it fears appearing weak. Humility welcomes correction because it values growth more than appearances. Every successful comeback requires humility. You must be willing to admit mistakes, change old habits, and abandon beliefs that no longer serve you. This process is uncomfortable because it challenges your ego, but it also creates space for remarkable transformation. Another lesson failure teaches is patience. Modern society celebrates quick results. We expect instant progress, immediate recognition, and overnight success. But meaningful growth rarely follows that timeline. Trees do not become forests in a single season. Great leaders are not developed in a weekend. Strong character is built through years of consistent choices, difficult lessons, and quiet perseverance. Failure slows us down long enough to develop qualities that fast success often overlooks. Patience, discipline, perseverance, empathy, wisdom. These qualities become the foundation of lasting success. When success eventually arrives, people often admire the achievement without recognizing the countless failures that made it possible. They see the finished building but not the years spent laying its foundation. They applaud the performance but never witness the endless hours of practice behind the scenes. What they call talent is often resilience in disguise. Perhaps the greatest gift hidden inside failure is perspective. It teaches you that your value does not depend on one result. It reminds you that one closed door does not eliminate every opportunity. It proves that your identity is larger than your circumstances. Most importantly, it reveals strengths you never knew you possessed. You don't discover courage when everything is easy. You discover courage when fear tells you to stop, yet you continue anyway. You don't discover resilience during comfortable seasons. You discover resilience when life demands more from you than you believed you could give. Every challenge carries two possibilities. It can either make you more bitter or make you wiser. It can convince you to quit or inspire you to grow. The difference lies not in the challenge itself, but in the mindset you choose to bring into it. As you reflect on your own setbacks, resist the temptation to ask only, "Why did this happen?" Instead, ask a better question. What is this experience trying to teach me? That single question transforms pain into purpose. It transforms disappointment into direction. It transforms failure into wisdom. One day, you may look back on the hardest season of your life and realize it was never sent to destroy you. It was preparing you. It was stripping away the habits, assumptions, and fears that no longer belonged in your future. Failure was never standing in the way of your success. It was quietly building the strength you would need to sustain it. And sometimes, the greatest victory is not avoiding failure. It is allowing failure to become the teacher that leads you to the life you were meant to live. Chapter 6. Letting go of the past. The past has a strange way of holding on to us. Even when the days move forward, our minds often remain trapped in moments that have already ended. A painful conversation, a missed opportunity, a broken relationship, a business failure, or one decision we wish we could take back can continue to shape the way we think long after the event itself is over. We replay old memories as though revisiting them might somehow change the outcome. We carry invisible burdens that no one else can see, believing that if we hold on tightly enough, we might eventually find peace. Yet the opposite is usually true. The tighter we cling to the past, the more difficult it becomes to embrace the future. One of the greatest obstacles to a comeback is not failure itself. It is refusing to let failure stay where it belongs, in the past. Many people never truly move forward because they continue living emotionally in yesterday. They allow old disappointments to influence new decisions. They hesitate to trust because someone once betrayed them. They avoid pursuing opportunities because they remember a previous rejection. They lower their expectations because they have convinced themselves that history will always repeat itself. But life cannot offer you a new chapter if you insist on rereading the old one. This does not mean forgetting your experiences. The goal is not to erase the past or pretend it never happened. Every experience, even the painful ones, contains valuable lessons. The problem begins when memories stop becoming teachers and start becoming prisons. A lesson should guide you. A prison keeps you from moving. There is an important difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering allows you to gain wisdom from an experience. Reliving forces you to experience the same emotional pain over and over again. Every time you replay an old failure with self-condemnation instead of understanding, you reopen wounds that were beginning to heal. Instead of growing stronger, you become emotionally exhausted. Many people unknowingly spend years punishing themselves for mistakes they can no longer change. Perhaps you trusted the wrong person. Perhaps you walked away from an opportunity too soon. Perhaps fear stopped you from chasing a dream. Perhaps you made decisions that hurt yourself or the people you loved. These realities can be painful to accept, but carrying endless guilt will never rewrite history. It only steals today's peace while changing nothing about yesterday. One of the hardest words in the English language is forgiveness. People often misunderstand what forgiveness really means. They assume forgiving someone excuses harmful behavior or erases accountability. It does neither. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was acceptable. It is choosing not to let what happened continue controlling your life. In many cases, the person who hurt you has already moved on. Meanwhile, resentment quietly continues occupying your thoughts every single day. Without realizing it, you become emotionally tied to the very experience you wish you could escape. Resentment is like carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. At first, you may believe the weight is manageable, but as time passes, every step becomes more exhausting. Eventually, you forget what it feels like to walk freely because you've carried the burden for so long. Forgiveness is not giving the backpack to someone else. It is finally deciding to put it down. Sometimes, the person you need to forgive most is not someone else. It is yourself. Self-forgiveness can be incredibly difficult because we know every detail of our own failures. We remember the words we wish we had never spoken. We remember the opportunities we wasted and the promises we failed to keep. Our inner critic never seems to forget those moments. Yet imagine if your closest friend came to you after making a painful mistake. Would you tell them they deserve to suffer forever? Would you insist they should never have another chance? Of course not. You would remind them that people grow, that wisdom often comes through failure, and that one mistake does not define an entire life. Why then do we refuse to extend that same compassion to ourselves? Growth requires accountability, but it also requires grace. Accountability says, I accept responsibility for my choices. Grace says, I refuse to believe my worst decision is my final identity. You need both. Without accountability, you repeat the same mistakes. Without grace, you never recover from them. There is another burden that quietly keeps people trapped in the past: limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are stories we tell ourselves based on painful experiences. They sound convincing because they are built on real events. I failed once, so I'll probably fail again. I was rejected, so I must not be good enough. My business didn't work, so I'm not meant to succeed. I've always been unlucky. Over time, these beliefs stop sounding like opinions. They begin feeling like facts, but they are not facts. They are interpretations, and interpretations can change. The remarkable thing about the human mind is that it believes the stories it hears most often. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you are incapable, your actions will eventually match that belief. But if you begin replacing those old stories with healthier ones, your behavior starts changing as well. Instead of saying, I failed, remind yourself, I learned. Instead of saying, I'm not capable, say, I'm still growing. Instead of saying, it's too late, say, my next chapter begins today. These are not empty affirmations. They are deliberate choices to stop allowing the past to dictate the future. One of the most inspiring examples of letting go comes from Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison under harsh conditions. Few people would have blamed him if he had emerged filled with bitterness and revenge. Instead, he made an extraordinary choice. He refused to allow hatred to define the rest of his life. Mandela once explained that if he had walked out of prison carrying bitterness, he would still be imprisoned. That insight carries tremendous wisdom. Sometimes freedom has nothing to do with changing your surroundings. Sometimes freedom begins by changing what you continue carrying inside. Letting go does not happen all at once. It is rarely one dramatic moment. More often, it is a daily decision. Every morning, you choose not to reopen yesterday's wounds. Every evening, you choose to focus more on tomorrow's possibilities than today's regrets. Slowly, those small decisions become a new way of living. You may still remember the pain. You may still remember the disappointment. You may still remember the people who let you down, but those memories no longer control your emotions or determine your choices. Instead, they become reminders of how far you have come. As you move forward, remember that your past has value, but only if you allow it to become a source of wisdom rather than a source of fear. Every setback has already given you its lesson. There is no need to keep paying for it with your peace of mind. The future has a remarkable way of rewarding people who make room for it. So release the guilt that no longer serves you. Release the resentment that has become too heavy to carry. Release the identity that was built around your worst moments. You are not abandoning your past. You are simply refusing to let it keep writing your future. Every comeback begins with one courageous choice, and sometimes that choice is not chasing something new. Sometimes it is finally letting go of something old. When your hands are no longer occupied by yesterday, they become free to build tomorrow. And that is where true freedom and your greatest comeback begins. Chapter 7. Becoming mentally unbreakable. Life has a way of testing every person. Some tests arrive unexpectedly, while others unfold slowly over months or even years. You may lose something valuable, face repeated disappointments, or watch carefully made plans fall apart. In those moments, the question is not whether life is difficult. The real question is whether your mind can remain steady when everything around you feels uncertain. Being mentally unbreakable does not mean you never feel pain. It does not mean you never cry, never feel afraid, or never experience moments of doubt. Those emotions are part of being human. True mental strength is the ability to experience those emotions without allowing them to control your decisions. It is the ability to bend without breaking, to pause without quitting, and to recover without losing your sense of purpose. Many people imagine resilience as a quality that only a lucky few are born with. They believe some individuals naturally possess extraordinary mental toughness, while others simply do not. The truth is very different. Resilience is not a gift. It is a skill. Like any skill, it grows stronger through practice. Think about a tree standing in the middle of a storm. Strong winds push against it from every direction. Rain soaks its branches, and the ground beneath it begins to shake. Yet the tree survives because it knows how to bend. If it refused to move, the storm would eventually snap it in half. Its flexibility becomes its greatest strength. The human mind works in much the same way. People often break, not because life becomes difficult, but because they resist every change life brings. They hold tightly to expectations that no longer match reality. They refuse to adapt, believing that strength means never changing. In reality, some of the strongest people are those who know when to adjust, when to learn, and when to begin again. Every challenge you face has two possible outcomes. It can make you weaker, or it can make you stronger. The deciding factor is not the challenge itself. It is the mindset you choose while facing it. Imagine two people losing the same job on the same day. One person concludes, "My career is over, I'll never recover." The other thinks, "This hurts, but perhaps this is an opportunity to develop new skills and discover a better path." Both experience the same event. The difference lies in the story they tell themselves afterward. Your mind is constantly interpreting your experiences. Those interpretations shape your emotions. Your emotions influence your actions, and your actions create your future. That is why protecting your mindset is one of the most important responsibilities you will ever have. Mental resilience also requires emotional endurance. In today's world, many people expect immediate relief from discomfort. If something becomes difficult, they look for the fastest escape. They avoid hard conversations, abandon meaningful goals, or quit at the first sign of resistance. While temporary comfort may feel satisfying, it often prevents long-term growth. Every meaningful achievement demands the ability to stay committed, even when progress feels invisible. Think of a marathon runner preparing for a race. The strength required on race day is not built during the final mile. It is built through months of disciplined training, early mornings, aching muscles, and countless moments when giving up would have been easier. Every difficult practice session quietly prepares the runner for the challenge ahead. Life prepares us in the same way. The small challenges you overcome today are strengthening you for bigger challenges tomorrow. This is why you should never underestimate difficult seasons. They may feel unfair while you're living through them, but they are often developing qualities that comfort never could. Patience grows during delays. Courage grows during uncertainty. Wisdom grows through mistakes. Resilience grows through repeated recovery. One habit shared by mentally strong people is that they focus on what they can control instead of becoming consumed by what they cannot. There will always be circumstances beyond your influence. You cannot control other people's opinions, unexpected setbacks, economic changes, or every opportunity that comes your way. But you can control your attitude, your effort, your response, and the choices you make each day. When you focus your energy on what you can influence, you reclaim your personal power. When you obsess over what you cannot change, you surrender that power. Another characteristic of resilient people is their relationship with failure. They no longer view setbacks as proof that they are incapable. Instead, they see them as temporary obstacles that carry valuable lessons. Every setback becomes an opportunity to become wiser, more disciplined, and more prepared for future success. This mindset does not eliminate disappointment. It transforms disappointment into determination. History offers countless examples of people who refused to allow setbacks to define them. Consider Abraham Lincoln. Before becoming one of America's most respected presidents, he experienced repeated business failures, political defeats, and personal hardships. Many people would have accepted those disappointments as evidence that success was impossible. Lincoln chose persistence instead. Every setback strengthened his character and deepened his resolve. His resilience eventually became one of his greatest leadership qualities. Your life may never appear in history books, but the same principle applies to your personal journey. Every obstacle you overcome increases your capacity to face future challenges with greater confidence and wisdom. Mental resilience also depends on the company you keep. The people around you either strengthen your mindset or weaken it. Spend enough time with individuals who constantly complain, blame others, and expect failure, and those attitudes begin influencing your own thinking. Surround yourself with people who encourage growth, take responsibility, and face adversity with courage, and you naturally begin adopting similar habits. This does not mean avoiding everyone who struggles. It means choosing relationships that inspire progress instead of reinforcing hopelessness. Perhaps the greatest sign of mental strength is the willingness to keep moving forward without knowing exactly how everything will unfold. Certainty is comforting, but growth rarely happens in certainty. Growth happens when you take the next step, despite unanswered questions. You do not need to have your entire future planned today. You only need enough courage to take the next right step. Every time you refuse to quit after disappointment, your resilience grows. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, your character grows. Every time you rise after being knocked down, your confidence grows. These moments may seem ordinary, but together they create an extraordinary life. Remember, becoming mentally unbreakable does not mean life will stop testing you. Storms will still come. Challenges will still appear. There will still be days when you feel tired, uncertain, or discouraged. The difference is that those storms will no longer have the power to define you. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you will begin asking, "What strength is this challenge helping me develop?" That single question changes everything. Because an unbreakable mind is not built by avoiding hardship. It is built by walking through hardship, learning from it, and refusing to let it steal your hope. Every setback you survive becomes another layer of strength. Every challenge you overcome becomes another reason to believe in yourself. And with every difficult season you endure, you become the kind of person who no longer fears life's storms because you know you have already survived them before. Chapter 8. Rewriting your story. Every person lives by a story. It may not be written on paper, but it exists in the mind. It is the collection of beliefs, memories, experiences, and conclusions that shape how you see yourself and the world around you. This inner story influences the decisions you make, the risks you take, the opportunities you pursue, and even the dreams you believe you deserve. The problem is that many people are living by stories they never consciously chose. Somewhere along the way, they accepted labels that slowly became part of their identity. I've always been shy. I'm not smart enough. I'm unlucky. I'm not leadership material. I always fail. No one believes in me. At first, these statements may have been reactions to temporary experiences, but over time, repeated often enough, they transformed into personal truths. Without realizing it, many people stop introducing themselves to the future based on who they are capable of becoming and start introducing themselves based on who they used to be. The most dangerous label is not the one others place on you. It is the one you choose to believe. Imagine reading a novel where the main character gives up after the first major obstacle. The story would feel incomplete. You would keep wondering what might have happened if the character had continued. Yet many people do exactly that with their own lives. They allow one painful chapter to become the ending of a book that still has many pages left. Failure becomes their identity. Rejection becomes their identity. Loss becomes their identity. But these are chapters, they are not titles. The beautiful thing about life is that your story is still being written. As long as you are alive, you have the power to change its direction. You cannot rewrite yesterday's events, but you can absolutely rewrite tomorrow's decisions. That is where transformation begins. Every meaningful comeback requires a new identity before it produces a new outcome. Many people focus only on changing their circumstances. They want a better job, healthier relationships, greater financial stability, or improved physical health. While those goals are valuable, lasting change rarely begins with external results. It begins internally. If you continue seeing yourself as the same person who failed, you will unconsciously make decisions that reinforce that identity. Your actions will always try to stay consistent with your beliefs. Think about someone who believes they are bad with money. Even if they receive a higher income, they may continue making poor financial decisions because their identity hasn't changed. Their circumstances improve temporarily, but their mindset pulls them back to familiar patterns. The same principle applies to confidence, relationships, leadership, and personal growth. You don't permanently change your life by changing your environment alone. You change your life by changing the person who interacts with that environment. This requires letting go of outdated identities. Perhaps you once believed you weren't capable because someone criticized your abilities years ago. Perhaps one failed business convinced you that entrepreneurship wasn't meant for you. Perhaps a broken relationship made you believe you were impossible to love. Those experiences were real, but they were never qualified to define your future. One of the greatest examples of rewriting a personal story is Oprah Winfrey. Her early life was filled with poverty, trauma, and rejection. She experienced circumstances that could have easily convinced her that success belonged to someone else. Yet instead of allowing those experiences to determine the rest of her life, she gradually built a new identity. She saw herself not as a victim of her past, but as someone capable of creating a different future. That change in identity influenced every decision that followed. The world eventually saw extraordinary success. She first saw extraordinary possibility. This is why vision is so important. Every comeback begins with seeing a future that does not yet exist. Before a building is constructed, an architect first creates a blueprint. Before a painting appears on a canvas, an artist imagines it in the mind. Before an athlete wins a championship, countless hours are spent visualizing success long before it becomes reality. Your future works the same way. You must become mentally familiar with the life you hope to create before you begin building it. Ask yourself an important question. Who do I want to become? Not what do I want to own? Not what title do I want? Not what recognition do I want? Who do I want to become? Do you want to become someone who remains calm under pressure? Someone who keeps promises? Someone who inspires others? Someone who continues learning no matter their age? Someone who refuses to quit after failure? Those qualities become the foundation of a new identity. Once your identity changes, your habits naturally begin changing as well. Another important part of rewriting your story is changing the language you use about yourself. Pay attention to your inner conversations. Do you constantly remind yourself of old mistakes? Do you describe yourself using outdated labels? Do you assume future failures before taking the first step? Words shape beliefs. Beliefs shape actions. Actions shape destiny. Instead of saying, "I'm a failure," remind yourself, "I experience failure, but I'm learning." Instead of saying, "I'm not confident," say, "I'm becoming more confident through practice." Instead of saying, "My best years are behind me," say, "My next chapter is waiting to be written." These are not unrealistic fantasies. They are intentional choices that allow your future to become larger than your past. Rewriting your story also requires surrounding yourself with people who see your potential rather than constantly reminding you of your limitations. The voices you hear repeatedly become the voices you eventually believe. Choose relationships that encourage growth, challenge excuses, celebrate progress, and remind you of who you are becoming rather than who you once were. Most importantly, understand that writing a new story takes patience. Authors do not finish great books in a single day. Builders do not complete great buildings in one afternoon. Meaningful lives are not transformed overnight. Every day you make one better decision, one healthier choice, one courageous step, and one honest effort. You're adding another meaningful page to your story. Some pages will still include disappointment. Some pages will include uncertainty. Some pages will contain mistakes. That is true of every remarkable life. What matters is that you keep writing. Never hand the pen to your fears. Never allow yesterday's failures to become tomorrow's limitations. Never believe that one difficult season has the authority to define the rest of your life. Your past may explain where your story began, but it has no power to decide how it ends. Chapter 9. Building Better Habits for a Better Future. A comeback is rarely built through one dramatic moment. Movies often tell stories of overnight transformation. One inspiring speech changes everything. One opportunity suddenly solves every problem. One breakthrough turns an ordinary person into an extraordinary success. Real life is very different. Most meaningful comebacks are quiet. They are built behind closed doors, through choices that seem too small to matter. They begin with one habit, then another, until those small actions create a completely different life. The truth is simple. Your future is hidden inside your daily routine. What you repeatedly do matters far more than what you occasionally accomplish. One great day cannot compensate for months of unhealthy habits. Likewise, one bad day cannot destroy a future built on years of consistent effort. Your habits are always moving you in a direction, whether you realize it or not. Imagine two airplanes leaving the same airport. One changes its course by only a few degrees. At first, the difference is almost impossible to notice. After several hours, however, the airplanes arrive in completely different countries. Tiny adjustments create enormous differences over time. Life works exactly the same way. Small decisions may appear insignificant today, but they compound into remarkable results tomorrow. Many people fail to recognize this because they are addicted to immediate results. They start exercising for a week and expect dramatic physical changes. They read one book and expect instant wisdom. They save money for a month and wonder why they are not financially secure. When visible progress doesn't appear quickly, they assume their efforts are useless. But success has always been a game of patience. Nature reminds us of this every day. A seed does not become a tree overnight. For weeks, even months, much of its growth happens beneath the surface where no one can see it. The roots are developing before the branches ever appear. If someone judged the seed only by what was visible during those early days, they would mistakenly conclude that nothing was happening. Personal growth follows the same principle. Long before your life changes on the outside, it begins changing on the inside. Every healthy habit strengthens your discipline. Every good decision reinforces your identity. Every consistent action builds another layer of trust in yourself. This is why consistency is more valuable than intensity. Many people become highly motivated for a short period. They make ambitious plans, set unrealistic goals, and try to change everything at once. They wake up at 5 in the morning, exercise for 2 hours, read several books, completely change their diet, and work late into the night. Within a few weeks, exhaustion replaces enthusiasm, and they quietly return to their old habits. Real transformation rarely happens that way. Lasting change is built through sustainable progress. Doing something small every day will almost always outperform doing something extraordinary once in a while. Author James Clear popularized a powerful idea in his book Atomic Habits: improve by just 1% every day. A 1% improvement seems almost meaningless. You probably won't notice the difference tomorrow or even next week, but over months and years, those tiny improvements compound into extraordinary growth. Think about someone who decides to read just 10 pages every day. 10 pages don't seem impressive, yet after 1 year, that person may have completed more than a dozen books. Imagine the knowledge gained, the new perspectives developed, and the ideas discovered simply because they remained consistent. Small habits create extraordinary futures. One of the biggest mistakes people make after experiencing failure is believing they need a completely new life. In reality, most people don't need a completely new life. They need a better daily routine. Instead of asking, "How can I change everything?" ask, "What can I improve today?" That single question removes pressure and creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth. At first, every positive habit requires conscious effort. You must remind yourself to exercise, to wake up earlier, to read, to meditate, or to practice gratitude. It feels uncomfortable because your brain prefers familiar routines. But every time you repeat a positive behavior, your brain becomes more efficient at performing it. Eventually, what once felt difficult begins feeling natural. This is why your first victory each day matters. If the first hour of your morning is filled with purpose, discipline, and intention, you are far more likely to make better decisions throughout the rest of the day. On the other hand, if your day begins with distractions, procrastination, and excuses, those patterns often continue. Your morning doesn't have to be perfect. It simply needs to begin with one intentional action. Perhaps it's making your bed. Perhaps it's reading a few pages. Perhaps it's taking a short walk. Perhaps it's writing 3 things you're grateful for. Small victories create bigger victories. Another important habit is learning to replace destructive routines rather than simply trying to eliminate them. Many people focus entirely on stopping bad habits. I'll stop procrastinating. I'll stop wasting time. I'll stop complaining. While those intentions are admirable, the mind responds better to replacement than removal. Instead of trying not to waste time, decide how you will use that time. Instead of trying not to complain, practice expressing gratitude. Instead of trying not to scroll endlessly through social media, replace 15 minutes of scrolling with 15 minutes of learning. Empty spaces rarely stay empty. If you remove a negative habit without replacing it with something positive, The old habit usually returns. Building better habits also means designing an environment that supports success. Willpower is important, but it is unreliable. Some days you'll feel motivated, other days you won't. Your environment quietly influences your behavior every single day. If healthy food is available, you're more likely to eat well. If books are within reach, you're more likely to read. If your phone is constantly demanding your attention, you'll probably become distracted. Make good habits easy. Make bad habits difficult. Small environmental changes often produce surprisingly large behavioral changes. Remember that setbacks will still happen. There will be mornings when you oversleep, days when you skip your workout, weeks when life becomes overwhelming. Do not confuse one bad day with a bad life. People who succeed are not those who never make mistakes. They are those who return to their habits quickly after making them. Never allow one missed day to become one abandoned goal. Every comeback includes moments of imperfection. The difference is that resilient people refuse to let temporary setbacks become permanent patterns. As your habits improve, something deeper begins to change. You stop identifying yourself by your past failures. Instead, you begin identifying yourself by your present actions. You become someone who keeps promises, someone who finishes what they start, someone who values growth over comfort, someone who chooses discipline even when motivation disappears. That identity is far more powerful than any single achievement, because achievements come and go. Identity stays. One day, people may look at your success and assume it happened because of extraordinary talent or incredible luck. They will admire the results while overlooking the hundreds of ordinary decisions that created them. They will not see the mornings when you chose discipline over comfort. They will not see the evenings when you kept learning instead of giving up. They will not see the countless moments when no one was watching, yet you continued showing up anyway. Those quiet moments are where every great comeback is built. Never underestimate the power of a single habit. A single healthy decision repeated every day can completely change the direction of your life. Every page you read strengthens your mind. Every promise you keep strengthens your character. Every step forward strengthens your confidence. And every consistent action reminds you that your future is not determined by what happened yesterday, but by what you choose to do today. Your comeback will never be defined by one extraordinary day. It will be defined by hundreds of ordinary days lived with extraordinary consistency. Because in the end, the life you dream about is not created by occasional inspiration. It is created by the habits you refuse to abandon. Chapter 10. Rising Beyond Fear. Fear has a way of making the impossible seem inevitable. It whispers that you will fail again. It reminds you of every mistake you've ever made. It magnifies uncertainty until taking even the smallest step feels overwhelming. After experiencing failure, fear often becomes louder than confidence, convincing you that staying where you are is safer than risking another disappointment. But there is one truth fear never tells you. The greatest risk is not failing again. The greatest risk is allowing fear to stop you from living the life you were meant to live. Every meaningful comeback requires courage, not because courageous people are fearless, but because they refuse to let fear make their decisions. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to move forward even while fear walks beside you. Many people spend years waiting for fear to disappear before taking action. They believe that successful people wake up every morning feeling completely confident and certain. In reality, even the most accomplished individuals experience doubt. They simply understand that confidence is built by acting despite fear, not by waiting for fear to vanish. Think about the first time you learned to swim. Standing at the edge of the pool, the water probably looked deeper than it really was. Your mind imagined everything that could go wrong. But the moment you entered the water and began practicing, something changed. The fear that once seemed overwhelming slowly lost its power. Not because the water changed, but because you did. Life follows the same pattern. The fears that seem enormous from a distance often become manageable once you take the first step. One reason fear becomes so powerful after failure is because the mind tries to protect us from experiencing pain again. If a business failed, fear tells you never to start another one. If a relationship ended in heartbreak, fear tells you never to trust again. If you were rejected once, fear encourages you to avoid every future opportunity that could lead to another rejection. Although this instinct feels protective, it quietly becomes a prison. When fear controls your decisions, your world becomes smaller. You stop exploring, you stop learning, you stop growing. Slowly, your comfort zone becomes your entire world. The problem is that nothing extraordinary grows inside a comfort zone. Every meaningful achievement requires stepping into uncertainty. Every dream asks you to risk failure. Every opportunity demands a little courage. Growth has always lived on the other side of discomfort. Discomfort is often misunderstood. Most people see it as a warning sign that something is wrong. In many situations, however, discomfort is evidence that you are expanding beyond your previous limits. The muscles become stronger because they are challenged. The mind becomes wiser because it solves difficult problems. Character becomes stronger because it endures uncomfortable seasons. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid discomfort?" begin asking, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me?" That simple shift changes the way you experience challenges. Instead of resisting difficult conversations, you begin seeing them as opportunities to become a better communicator. Instead of avoiding responsibility, you recognize it as a chance to develop leadership. Instead of fearing uncertainty, you begin understanding that uncertainty often introduces the greatest possibilities. Consider the inspiring journey of Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Before building a billion-dollar company, she faced repeated rejection while trying to introduce her product to manufacturers and retailers. Many people dismissed her idea. Others doubted her ability to succeed in a competitive industry. Yet she continued moving forward despite uncertainty. Rather than seeing rejection as proof that she should stop, she treated every no as one step closer to the right yes. Her courage did not eliminate obstacles, it allowed her to move through them. That is the power of acting despite fear. Fear also weakens when you stop demanding certainty. One of the greatest illusions in life is believing that successful people always know exactly how everything will unfold. They do not. Entrepreneurs start businesses without guarantees. Authors write books without knowing whether anyone will read them. Athletes train without knowing if they will win championships. They move forward because they understand something important. Progress belongs to those who act before certainty arrives. Waiting for perfect conditions often becomes another form of procrastination. You tell yourself you'll begin when you have more money, more experience, more confidence, or more time. Yet those conditions rarely arrive all at once. If you keep waiting for life to become perfectly predictable, you may spend your entire life standing still. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. Every step you take teaches you something that thinking alone never could. Every conversation builds communication skills. Every attempt increases experience. Every challenge develops resilience. And every courageous action strengthens trust in yourself. Self-trust is one of the greatest rewards of overcoming fear. Every time you face something difficult instead of avoiding it, you send yourself a powerful message: I can handle more than I thought. That message becomes the foundation of lasting confidence. This does not mean every risk will produce immediate success. Some attempts will still fail, some plans will need adjusting, some goals will take longer than expected. But failure after courageous action is never wasted. It leaves you wiser, it leaves you stronger, it leaves you better prepared for the next opportunity. The only true defeat is allowing fear to convince you that trying is no longer worth it. As you continue building your comeback, remember that fear will probably accompany you from time to time. Do not interpret its presence as a signal to stop. Instead, see it as evidence that you are moving towards something meaningful. The greatest transformations rarely happen when life feels comfortable. They happen when ordinary people choose courage over certainty, growth over comfort, and possibility over fear. One brave decision today may seem small, one difficult conversation, one application, one opportunity accepted, one dream pursued. Yet those single decisions often become the turning points people remember for the rest of their lives. Your future is not waiting for the day you stop feeling afraid. It is waiting for the day you decide that your dreams matter more than your fears. And the moment you take that first courageous step, fear no longer stands in front of your path. It begins falling behind you. Chapter 11. Becoming stronger than before. When people think about a comeback, they often imagine returning to the life they had before everything went wrong. They dream of recovering what was lost, rebuilding what was broken, and returning to a familiar place where everything feels safe again. But the greatest comebacks are not about going back. They are about moving forward. Life is not trying to make you the person you used to be. It is giving you the opportunity to become someone even stronger. Every challenge you have faced, every disappointment you have endured, and every obstacle you have overcome has been shaping a version of yourself that could never have existed without those experiences. A butterfly never wishes to become a caterpillar again. Its struggle inside the cocoon is what gives it the strength to fly. In the same way, your struggles are preparing you for a life that your comfortable seasons never could. Many people ask, "Why did this happen to me?" It is a natural question. During painful moments, we desperately search for explanations. We want to understand why life seems unfair, why good people experience hardship, and why our plans sometimes fall apart despite our best efforts. While those questions are understandable, they rarely lead us toward growth. A more powerful question is, what is this experience preparing me for? That single shift changes everything. Instead of seeing pain as punishment, you begin seeing it as preparation. Instead of viewing obstacles as roadblocks, you begin recognizing them as training grounds. Instead of believing life is working against you, you begin believing it is working on you. This perspective does not erase pain, but it gives pain a purpose. Purpose has an incredible ability to transform suffering. When people know their struggles are leading somewhere meaningful, they find strength they never knew they possessed. They continue walking when others would quit because they understand that temporary hardship can produce lasting transformation. Think about a blacksmith forging a sword. The metal is repeatedly placed into intense fire, struck by a heavy hammer, and cooled before the process begins again. If the metal could speak, it might interpret every strike as destruction. But the blacksmith knows better. The fire is not ruining the metal. The fire is refining it. Life often feels the same. Some seasons feel unbearably hot. Pressure comes from every direction. Plans collapse. Expectations disappear. Nothing seems to unfold the way you imagined. Yet those very seasons are often refining qualities that comfort could never develop. Strength, patience, humility, compassion, wisdom, these qualities cannot be purchased. They cannot be borrowed. They must be developed. One of the greatest signs of personal growth is discovering that your deepest pain has made you more compassionate rather than more bitter. People who have experienced loneliness often become the first to welcome someone who feels forgotten. People who have struggled financially often become the most generous when they eventually succeed. People who have overcome failure often become the strongest encouragers because they understand what it feels like to doubt yourself. Pain has a unique ability to deepen our understanding of others. It reminds us that every person we meet is fighting battles we cannot see. When you begin viewing your own suffering through this lens, something remarkable happens. Your scars stop becoming reminders of weakness. They become evidence of survival. Many of the world's most inspiring leaders, teachers, and mentors are not people who lived perfect lives. They are people who experienced extraordinary hardship and chose to transform it into something meaningful. Instead of hiding their scars, they allowed those experiences to become bridges that connected them with others. Consider the life of Viktor Frankl. During one of history's darkest periods, he survived unimaginable suffering in Nazi concentration camps. He lost family members, endured horrific conditions, and witnessed pain that most people can scarcely comprehend. Yet after the war, he did not dedicate his life to bitterness. Instead, he devoted himself to helping others discover meaning even in the midst of suffering. His message was simple, yet profound. While we cannot always control our circumstances, we can choose our attitude toward them. That choice gave millions of people hope. Your story has the same potential. Perhaps you will never write a best-selling book or speak to thousands of people. Perhaps your influence will be quieter. You may encourage a struggling friend, support a family member, mentor a young colleague, or simply become the person who listens without judging. Never underestimate the power of your example. Someone who sees you rise after failure gains permission to believe they can rise too. Someone who watches you remain kind after disappointment learns that hardship does not have to destroy character. Someone who observes your resilience discovers that hope is still possible. This is how your pain becomes a gift, not because the pain itself was good, but because you refused to let it be wasted. Gratitude also plays a remarkable role in becoming stronger than before. At first, the idea of being grateful after experiencing hardship may seem impossible. Gratitude does not ask you to celebrate your suffering. It asks you to recognize that even difficult experiences can leave behind valuable lessons. Perhaps failure taught you humility. Perhaps rejection taught you perseverance. Perhaps loss taught you to value the people who truly matter. Perhaps uncertainty taught you courage. Gratitude shifts your attention from what life took away to what life helped you become. That change in perspective creates emotional freedom. As your comeback continues, remember that strength is not measured by how many times you avoid falling. Strength is measured by how many times you choose to stand again. Every setback you have survived has quietly expanded your capacity to handle future challenges. Every obstacle has increased your resilience. Every disappointment has sharpened your wisdom. You are no longer the person who began this journey. You have learned to face fear instead of running from it. You have learned to rebuild confidence through consistent action. You have learned to release the weight of the past and create habits that support a better future. Most importantly, you have learned that your circumstances do not define your identity. That realization changes everything. One day, someone may look at your life and admire your strength without ever knowing the storms you survived to build it. They will see confidence. They may never see the countless moments of doubt you overcame. They will see wisdom. They may never see the painful mistakes that taught it to you. They will see resilience. They may never see the nights you wondered if you would ever recover. But you will know. You will remember every difficult chapter that shaped the person you have become. And instead of wishing those chapters had never happened, you may one day realize they were the very chapters that prepared you for your greatest purpose. Because the strongest people are not those who have never been broken. They are the ones who gathered every broken piece, rebuilt themselves with courage, and emerged wiser, kinder, and stronger than ever before. Chapter 12. Your greatest comeback starts today. Every journey eventually arrives at a moment of decision, not a decision made someday in the future, not a decision made when life becomes easier, not a decision made after every doubt has disappeared. The decision that changes everything is always made today. Throughout this audiobook, you have traveled through failure, disappointment, healing, resilience, confidence, courage, and growth. You have discovered that setbacks do not define a person. Your mindset does. You have learned that pain can become wisdom, rejection can become redirection, and failure can become the foundation of a stronger future. Now comes the most important part of your journey, living what you have learned. Knowledge has value, but only when it becomes action. Reading inspiring words can motivate you for a moment, but daily choices shape an entire lifetime. Your comeback will never be measured by how many books you finish or how many motivational speeches you hear. It will be measured by the decisions you make after closing this chapter. Every sunrise gives you an opportunity that yesterday never could. A fresh beginning. Life does not ask you to become extraordinary overnight. It simply asks you to become a little better than you were yesterday. One better decision, one healthier habit, one courageous conversation, one step toward a dream that fear convinced you to abandon. Great lives are built exactly this way, one day at a time. Many people postpone transformation because they believe they need the perfect plan before taking the first step. They spend months preparing instead of beginning. They wait for confidence before acting, certainty before committing, and ideal circumstances before moving forward. But perfection has stopped more dreams than failure ever has. You already know enough to begin. You already possess enough strength to take the next step. The path becomes clearer only after you start walking. Imagine standing at the foot of a mountain before sunrise. The entire trail is hidden in darkness. If you refuse to move until you can see every step ahead, you will remain exactly where you are. But if you trust the small circle of light in front of you and keep walking, each step reveals the next one. Life rarely gives us complete certainty. It gives us enough light for the next step. Trust that light. Another important lesson is to protect your mindset every single day. Your comeback is not a destination you reach once and then forget about. It is a way of living. Every day, your mind will be influenced by the conversations you have, the people you spend time with, the information you consume, and the thoughts you choose to believe. Guard your mind carefully. Protect it from unnecessary negativity. Protect it from endless comparison. Protect it from voices that constantly remind you of your past but never encourage your future. Instead, fill your life with people who challenge you to grow, books that expand your thinking, habits that strengthen your character, and goals that give your life direction. Remember that setbacks will still come. There will be seasons when life tests your patience again. There will be disappointments you cannot predict. There will be moments when old fears try to return. Do not interpret those moments as signs that you are failing. They are simply reminders that growth is a lifelong process. The difference now is that you are no longer the person you once were. You know how to heal instead of hide. You know how to learn instead of blame. You know how to rebuild instead of surrender. Most importantly, you know that every setback carries within it the possibility of another comeback. That knowledge becomes one of your greatest strengths. As your life improves, remember those who are still struggling. There are people around you who are quietly fighting battles that no one else can see. Some have lost hope, others are overwhelmed by fear or trapped by regret. Your words, your encouragement, and your example may become the reason they choose not to give up. One of the most meaningful ways to honor your own comeback is to help someone else begin theirs. You do not need to have a perfect life to inspire others. You simply need to show them that moving forward is possible. Your resilience will speak louder than your success. Your character will leave a greater legacy than your achievements. And your willingness to rise again will remind others that they can do the same. As you continue writing your story, never forget that success is not measured only by wealth, titles, or recognition. True success is becoming the kind of person who remains kind after disappointment, hopeful after failure, disciplined after setbacks, and grateful through every season of life. That kind of success cannot be taken away. It becomes part of who you are. Years from now, you may look back on the season that once brought you to your knees. You may remember the sleepless nights, the unanswered questions, the painful losses, and the moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing. Then you will realize something remarkable. Those moments did not destroy you. They introduced you to a stronger version of yourself, the version that refused to quit, the version that chose hope over despair, the version that rebuilt confidence one step at a time. The version that transformed pain into purpose and setbacks into strength. That person has been growing inside you all along. Today is not the end of this journey. It is the beginning of the life you have been preparing for, Walk forward with courage when the road is uncertain. Walk forward with humility when success arrives. Walk forward with compassion, because every person you meet is carrying a story of their own. Above all, never forget this truth. Your comeback is not defined by one victory. It is defined by the mindset you choose every single day. Because the strongest people are not those who never fall. They are the ones who rise, learn, grow, and keep moving forward again and again. Your past is behind you, your future is waiting, and your greatest comeback starts today. Congratulations on reaching the end of this journey. More importantly, congratulations on choosing not to give up on yourself. The pages of this audiobook were never meant to simply motivate you for a few moments. They were meant to remind you of something you may have forgotten during your hardest days, that no setback is powerful enough to define the rest of your life unless you allow it to. Every chapter has led you to one simple truth. Your greatest strength is not found in avoiding failure, but in your willingness to rise every time life knocks you down. You have learned that healing takes courage, confidence is built through consistent action, resilience grows through adversity, and hope begins with a single decision to keep moving forward. As you leave this audiobook, remember that your comeback is not waiting for the perfect opportunity. It begins with the choices you make today. One better habit, one brave conversation, one new opportunity, one more attempt after everyone else expects you to quit. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. But now you know something you didn't know before. Every challenge carries the opportunity to become wiser, stronger, and more resilient than you were yesterday. Never measure your life by how many times you fall. Measure it by how many times you choose to stand again. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not own you. Your mistakes may have taught you, but they do not define you. Your future is still unwritten, and the pen is in your hands. Walk forward with courage, live with purpose, choose hope every day. And whenever life tests you again, remember this: your comeback is always one decision away.